It was actually Muhammad Hijab who brought me out of atheism.
Go to chapter 2, verse 230 of the Quran. It's going to talk about when you divorce a woman.
And if he has divorced her for the third time, then she is not lawful to him afterwards until after she marries a husband other than him. And if the latter husband divorces her or dies, there is no blame upon the woman and her former husband for returning to each other if they think that they can keep within the limit of Allah. These are the limits of Allah, which she makes clear to people who know.
So notice, if I divorce my wife, the only way I can take her back, if she goes marry someone else and has sex with him, and he divorces her or he dies, then I can take her back, right?
Yes.
Okay, now go to Deuteronomy chapter 24, verses 1 to 4.
If a man marries a woman who becomes displeasing to him because he finds something indecent about her, and he writes her a certificate of divorce, gives it to her, and sends her from his house, and if after she leaves his house she becomes the wife of another man, and her second husband dislikes her and writes her a certificate of divorce, gives it to her, and sends her from his house, or if he dies, then her first husband who divorced her is not allowed to marry her again after she has been defiled. That would be detestable in the eyes of the Lord. Do not bring sin upon the land,
So can I ask you a
upon the
question?
land, the Lord.
Why is your God Allah doing what is disgusting to the God of Moses? Did you see the contradiction? The God of Moses says, if I divorce my wife, she marries another, and he divorces or dies, I better not take her back. That's going to defile the land. The God of Muhammad says, hey, if I divorce my wife, she better get married and have sex in order for me to take her back. So why is your God contradicting the God of Moses?
I never noticed that.
Oh, I'm going to give you another one. Go to chapter 4, verse 24.
Also forbidden are married women except female captives in your possession.
So wait, married women are forbidden for you to have sex with, right?
Except female captives.
Oh,
Yeah.
so if I take a female captive, even though she's married, your God is saying I can have sex with her, right?
Yes.
Okay, now I'm going to read the hadith. Sunan Abu Dawud in English is 2150. This is Sahih narration. Sheikh Al-Albani. Let me read to you the historical context. Abu Sayyid Al-Khudri said, the Apostle of Allah sent a military expedition to Autas on the occasion of the Battle of Hunayn. They met their enemy and fought with them. They defeated them and took them captives. Some of the companions of Apostle of Allah were reluctant to have relations with the female captives because of their pagan husbands. So they're still married, their husbands were there taken captive. So they didn't want to have sex because they're embarrassed. So Allah, the Exalted, sent down the Quranic verse, and all married women are forbidden unto you, save those captives whom your right hand possess. This is to say they are lawful for them when they complete their waiting period. So your God says to Muhammad, hey, you take a woman captive in war and she's married, you can have sex with her. She's your property. Doesn't matter her husband's alive. Then you can sell them off. Now, let me ask you an honest question. If the Muslims were to attack us today, just let's say hypothetically, whatever your view of jihad is, doesn't matter, just for this argument. The Muslims attack your city, take you and your wife captive, and the Muslim man has sex with your wife. Number one, would your wife be okay with it? Number two, would you be okay with it?
No, of course not.
But this is what your God has sanctioned, and he never abrogated it. Now, let me compare that with the God of Moses. Go to now Deuteronomy 21 and read 10 to 14. A law given 2,200 years before your prophet. Look what the true God tells Moses about women who've taken captive.
When you go out to war against your enemies, and the Lord your God gives them into your hand, and you take them captive, and you see among the captives a beautiful woman, and you desire to take her to be your wife, and you bring her home to your house, she shall shave her head and pare her nails, and she shall take off the clothes in which she was captured, and shall remain in your house, and lament her father and her mother a full month. After that you may go into her and be her husband.
Wait.
And she
Can you just have sex with her, or you must then marry her and be her husband?
You must be her husband.
And she will be your wife.
Yeah.
Now finish it.
But if you no longer delight in her, you shall let her go where she wants, but you shall not sell her for money, nor shall you treat her as a slave, since you have humiliated her.
So wait, what do you do for her?
You should marry her.
And then if you dislike her and you divorce her and shaming her by divorcing her, do you then sell her like property, like chattel, or you let her go free?
You would let her go free.
So why is the law of Moses superior to the law of your God when Moses, as God said, you cannot rape captive women, especially married. If there's a woman that you've taken captive, you give her time to mourn, let her shave her head and pare her nails, because that will also give her time to mourn, because that's a sign of mourning, but it does something else. Just in case you were lusting for her, when she shaves her head, then if it was lust, that lust will die out and you're going to leave her alone. But if you really loved her, then even with her head shaved, you'll still desire her, but you give her a full month, you don't touch her sexually. Then you marry her and you have sex with her. But if you divorce her, you send her out. Why is this law superior to the law of your God and prophet? When your God and prophet said you can take a married captive woman and have sex with her and then sell her off.
And can I just read the Quranic verse again?
Go ahead. And I gave you the link to the hadith, the context. So read it one more time. Compare the true God of Moses with your God. Read chapter 4, verse 24.
Also forbidden are married women, except female captives in your possession.
Wow. Wait. So here it says, if there's a married woman, you can't touch her except she's a female captive.
Would you not have to marry?
No. No.
Or
So it's right here, the hadith. I'm telling you, no. You can have sex with her and then you can sell her off. Here, let me read it again. Abu Sayyid al-Khudri, and it's Sahih, it's sound. Al-Albani, it's narrated by multiple hadith collectors. It's not just him. Abu Sayyid al-Khudri said, the Apostle of Allah sent a military expedition to Autas on the occasion of the Battle of Hunayn. They met their enemy and fought with them. They defeated them and took them captives. Some of the companions, Sahaba of the Apostle of Allah, were reluctant to have relations. Doesn't say marriage, have sex. Relations, that's the word, with the female captains because of their pagan husbands. So Allah the Exalted sent down the Quranic verse, and all married women are forbidden unto you. And the context is not about who you can have sex with, not about marriage. If you read verse 23, the Quranic verse, all married women are forbidden unto you, save those whom your right hands possess. That is to say, they are lawful for them when they complete their waiting period. Make sure they're not pregnant. And if they're not pregnant, you can go into them. Doesn't say marry them. You can have relations with them, and then you can do what you want with them. Sell them or keep them. And the husbands are still alive. What kind of God does this? Because now you have two problems. Number one, he's sanctioning adultery. Number two, for all intents and purposes, it's rape. Because I want you to convince me a woman who's married, whose husband is still alive, taken captive, would voluntarily, willfully want to have sex with her captor. Any sane woman would do that?
If her husband's still alive?
Yeah, it's right there. It says in front of the pagan husbands.
Probably not.
Come on, man. Any decent woman who's just been attacked and had family relatives or whatever killed, and a man jumps on her, wants to have sex with her, she says, oh yeah, I'm so excited, I was waiting. No decent moral woman would want to have sex. And there's nothing in the Quran or in the Hadith that says you got to get her permission because she belongs to you. She is your possession. The little Arabic isn't female captive. It's those that your right hands possess. That's the Arabic. That's why in the Hadith, notice how it's translated. Let me read it one more time. So Allah Exalted sent down the Quranic verse, and all married women are forbidden unto you, save those whom your right hand possess. That is an Arabic idiom meaning that which you own and possess. So here, this woman, you own her. That means she has no say-so in the matter. And you're okay with this?
Oh, yeah.
Exactly. My friend, you made a big mistake leaving atheism for Islam. You ended up making the conscious decision of becoming a Muslim. So from 24 to 27, for 3 years, you were of your own volition a Muslim.
Correct. And then as of, I would say last year, I kind of stepped away from it so that I can discern for myself. I felt like I made the decision to convert to Islam out of listening to different debates and listening to the things that my father says and all these other things instead of discerning for myself and actually reading through the whole Quran. You know,
3 years ago, embraced Islam, but then you decided, let me take a step back last year to re-examine my decision of becoming a Muslim and to see both sides. Now, you said listening to debates. Who introduced you to the debates and what debates?
I would listen to mostly, my father would send me videos every so often, and I'd watch Muhammad Hijab. I'd watch, what's his name? I think it's Zaire, the Indian.
Zakir Naik?
Yeah, Zakir Naik.
Oh, you're from this area. All right.
I think Ahmed Didat.
Interesting, man. So you watched them. Okay. And then what happened?
I just felt like logically some things they were saying were making sense. And so I guess the videos I was watching was mostly people that they were going up against who couldn't really stand on a foundation to explain themselves.
Precisely, yes.
What made his message so profound that he has like a large following, like we have like.
Not according to history, no. In Mecca, he had a small following. He had to flee to Medina, become head of state, then conquer Arabia by the power of military force. Have you read Islamic history? That's not true. This is part 2 now, what Muhammad said about women. Chapter 2, verse 228. The divorce shall wait the result until they have had their courses thrice, meaning 3 monthly cycles, nor ought they to conceal what God hath created in their wombs. If they believe in God, and lastly, so if you're pregnant, let your husband know that who's about to divorce you. And it will be more just in their husbands to bring them back when in this state they desire what is right. and it is for the woman to act as they act by them. In all fairness, but the men are a step above them. Men have a degree above women. And I'm going to show you Muhammad's interpretation. Chapter 2, verse 282. And get 2 witnesses. When you are engaging in business transaction, you need 2 witnesses. And what must they be?
Men.
Well, what if you can't find 2 men? Now watch the solution. And if there are not 2 men available, then a man and 2 women. Why a man and 2 women? You only need 2 male witnesses. But if you can't find 2 male, you need a man and 2 female witnesses. Why is that? I'm going to show you why. Tafsir al-Jalalain on 282. Why does it require 2 female to equal 1 man? Here, the number of women is because of the fact so that if one of the 2 women errs, forgets the testimony, given their lesser astuteness and accuracy. You really believe that garbage?
No.
But that's what chapter 2, verse 82 of the Quran says right here.
Yeah, it definitely doesn't make sense.
So that was chapter 2, verse 288. So why do you need 2 females? Because they're less astute and accurate. Oh, really? Now, what about chapter 4, verse 34? It says men are superior to women, which is why a man can discipline a woman and beat her. Now, what makes the man superior? Here, Tafsir al-Jalalain. Men are in charge of, they have authority over women, disciplining them and keeping them in check. Because of that, with which Allah, God has preferred the one over the other. That is because God has given them the advantage over women in knowledge, reason, authority, and otherwise. So men are smarter, they're more reasonable. All right, here's another commentary attributed to Ibn Abbas, Muhammad's first cousin. Some say, well, it's not really from him, but still, these are narrations that were attributed to him. Even if it's not from him, it at least tells you what Muslims were thinking. Chapter 2, verse 228. Why does it take 2 women? Because a man has a degree over them in relation to the reasoning faculty. This is now chapter 2, verse 228, not chapter 2, verse 282, where it says 2 witnesses. See, I even get tongue-tied. Chapter 2, verse 228. Why does a man have a degree over a woman? Because a man has a degree over them regarding reasoning, faculty, inheritance, blood money as witnesses in court, and also that which they owe them in terms of expenditure and service. Now, why do men have a degree over them? In what way? They have a degree over a woman in reasoning, faculty, inheritance, blood money, and witnesses in court. Because you only need 2 men, whereas with women, you're going to need a man and 2 women. And this tradition, attributed to Ibn Zayd. When Eve sinned, Allah said, this is your punishment. I will also make her stupid, although I had created her intelligent, Halima, and must make her suffer pregnancy and birth with difficulty, although I made it easy for her to be pregnant and give birth. Ibn Zayd said, were it not for the affliction that affected Eve, the woman of this world would not menstruate, and they would be intelligent, and when pregnant, give birth easily. Now, I can talk about Muslim men beating Muslim women, straight here, but I want to skip that part, because I want to show you what Muhammad said. Majority of people in hell are women. The Prophet said, isn't the witness of a woman equal to half of that of man? Because it takes 2 women equal to testimony of 1 man? The woman said yes. He said, this is because of the deficiency of a woman's mind. So according to Muhammad, your wife is stupid. They're not as intelligent as you. Are you okay with that?
No.
But wait, you're a Muslim. Why wouldn't you be? No, but this is your religion.
Yeah.
Right? Hypothetically, you're still a quote unquote, you're on a search, but if you're a Muslim, he just said, listen, man, I'm not insulting your mom, I'm just telling you. Do you believe that about your wife?
No.
Would you believe that about your daughter if you had a daughter?
No.
But you are going against Muhammad. You just proved you're not a Muslim because you're saying Muhammad is full of it. Because here again, narrated Abu Sayyid al-Khudri. Once Allah's apostle went out to the Musalla on the Eid al-Adha or al-Fitr, then he passed by the woman and said, oh woman, give alms, as I've seen that the majority of the dwellers of hellfire were you. So the majority of people in hell are who?
Women.
Do you believe that the majority of people in hell will be women like your mother and your wife?
I would hope not.
But he says the majority of people in hell are women. That means there's a greater likelihood for your mother to be in hell than in paradise. If we go with these odds, right?
And that's not fair and just God if they're not given the equal playing grounds as a man.
No, but you saw Allah said they're stupid. They're not as knowledgeable. They're not reasonable.
Mm-hmm.
Why though? Here's the reason. They asked, why is it, oh Allah's apostle? He replied, you curse frequently. Last time I checked, men curse as much, don't they?
Yeah.
So why is he blaming them for cursing? Now watch, not only that, you curse frequently and are ungrateful to your husbands. Last time I checked, I've seen more men be ungrateful to their wives and cheat on them, right?
Yeah.
But look what Muhammad is saying. The reason why the majority of people in hell are women, because you curse and you're ungrateful to your husbands. Now watch here. I've not seen anyone more deficient in intelligence, religion than you. So do you actually believe that your wife and your mother are more deficient in intelligence and religion than you? You, the man?
No.
But Muhammad said, then you're not a Muslim. You're no longer a Muslim, buddy. Are you listening to yourself? You're disagreeing with you're disagreeing with the Quran. But wait, a cautious, sensible man could be led astray by some of you. So only women lead men astray. Men have never led women astray. But now watch. Go ahead. You want to say something? Go ahead.
Yeah, I see a lot of. This is the type of stuff that I knew was lurking in there. That I guess that in the back of my mind, I knew there was more into it if you read into it.
Yep. And I gave you the sources. You got the links. Go back and see where I've lied. I haven't lied. I'm quoting their sources. Now watch this though. They ask him though. Watch her. The woman said, ask Allah, Allah's apostle, what is deficient in our religion? Intelligent religion. Now watch, listen to this, man. Listen. He said, is not the evidence of two women equal to the witness of one man? He's getting that from the Quran, isn't he? Right?
Yeah.
Okay, but I'm confused. Who said it takes two women equal the testimony of one man?
Allah said that to me. Yeah.
He said, is not the evidence of two women equal to the witness of one man? They were replying in the affirmative. Now, you know why they did? Because they're Muslim. They believe the Quran. Yeah, you're right. The Quran says it takes two of us to equal one man. He said, this is the deficiency in her intelligence. Now watch this part. Isn't it true that a woman can neither pray nor fast during her menses? The woman replied in affirmative. He said, this is the deficiency in her religion. Did you catch it?
Mm-hmm.
He says, you've been forbidden from praying or fasting when you have your menses, right?
Yeah.
He goes, see, that's what makes you less religious than men. So Muhammad is blaming women for something they cannot control.
No, I don't agree with any of that.
Then you're not a Muslim. You know you're not a Muslim, right?
Yeah.
So you pretty much renounced Muhammad.
I've been watching your live stream. I wasn't a Christian.
I thought you said that.
I was an
Later.
atheist.
Oh, because I thought I read here. I'm sorry. I converted to Islam. I apologize.
Yeah.
I misread it because it said converted to Islam, but I'm being pulled to Christianity. Okay, I'm sorry. My misunderstanding. Forgive me, sir. But were you raised in a Christian home?
Normally, like, they were Anglicans culturally, but
Okay.
nothing serious.
That's fine. Yeah, in other words, you didn't come out of a Muslim culture. You basically was Western. But go ahead. Yes, go ahead. Ask me.
Okay, so it's quite strange because it's kind of linked to the question you just had. It was that a lot of people say that, you know, Christ was a pacifist. They go against Muhammad because he was a mighty warlord and stuff like this. But like, you have prophets like King David, who was a mighty warlord, and so on. And it doesn't really make it, kind of like defeats, you know, their same arguments.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a question like in Matthew 15:4. Where Christ says, let me get it so I don't misquote. For
Matthew
God
15,
said, honor
24?
your father and mother,
Oh,
and
okay,
anyone who
yeah.
curses the...
Yeah, I know that one. I hope you're asking sincerely because I know Muslims use this out of context to pervert its meaning. Because yes, I know what you're referring to. Honor your father and mother, and what does not honor his father and mother is to be put to death. That's now an allusion to Deuteronomy 21, and he's referring to 18 to 21. And so
Yeah,
I know your objection, but I want you to articulate your objection so I can show you how not to interpret the Bible.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, is that is the literal text of that how Christians interpret it? Like,
How can you...
don't-
Okay. I want you to think logically because you sound like you're a logical thinker. When Jesus quotes that passage, the Jews are no longer ruling over the land. They're under the yoke of Rome. And as subjugated citizens of Rome, did they have any authority to put anyone to death? Now, before you answer the question, I'm going to give you the answer. Can you go to John 18:31?
Yes.
Have your Bible.
John 18,
31.
21.
31.
Okay.
Read it for me.
Pilate said, take him yourselves and judge him by your own law, but we have no right to execute anyone, they objected.
So could the Jews kill anyone?
No.
And Jesus knew that, right?
I presume so, yes.
How would you presume so when he's living under Roman rule?
Yes, hence I presume he would know.
Yeah, but presume means that you're not completely certain. So I'd say yes, he knew definitely. So unless Jesus was trying to start an insurrection, a revolt, he could not mean that law is to be applied in his time when Israel was a theocracy. His simple point is that the law takes seriously the dishonoring of one's parents, that you have to love your parents and honor them. Otherwise, you bring God's judgment on you. And yet here, you find a loophole in the law to give them the excuse to dishonor their parents.
Okay, so it's so you wouldn't Christians have never thought that they were going to kill their children if they disobeyed, because isn't that in the Ten Commandments anyways?
Well, can you show me in the Ten Commandments where it says put the rebellious son to death?
I don't think it says that. It says honor your father and mother, right?
And that's repeated in the New Testament in Ephesians 6 verses 1-3. Paul repeats it. You're confusing the Old Testament when it's a theocracy and you have judges and priests and later on kings who are supposed to govern the land according to God's legislation, with the church, which is no longer a theocracy in the sense that the church is not the government. It cannot impose God's law upon its citizens and also bring about all the punishments that the law demands depending on the infractions committed. Why are you confusing the two?
Oh, well, I guess out of ignorance, right?
No, it's okay. I'm not saying this to put you down. What I'm saying is, if you're going to read the Old Testament fairly and honestly, like I do the Quran, I know maybe some Christians don't, but I don't do that. I read the Quran contextually, within its own context and its historical sources, which Muslims are the ones who reject, but put that aside. In the Old Testament, God formed a nation and gave that nation a land and gave that nation borders and then gave that nation leaders to then make sure that that particular piece of real estate was governed according to God's law. And if those people refuse, then there would be penalties, fines that would be levied on them, as any government, any kingdom does to its citizens. When Jesus comes, he doesn't implement a theocracy, meaning he doesn't give Christians a piece of real estate, and that real estate they are to govern according to his rule, and those who fail to honor his rule will then suffer the due consequences, the penalties and the fines and so on. Because Jesus himself said, if you go to John 18, 33 to 37, read that for me. Go to John 18, 33 to 37.
Pilate then went back inside the palace, summoned Jesus and asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" Is that your own idea? Jesus asked, or did others talk to you about me? And am I a Jew? Pilate replied, "Your own people and chief priests handed you over to me. What is it that you have done?" Jesus said, "My kingdom is not of this world. If it were, my servants would fight to prevent
read
my
that part
arrest,
again.
but
One time. Jesus said what?
my kingdom is not of this world.
Because if it was, what would
If it, my servants would fight to prevent my arrest
And then go ahead, finish it.
by the Jewish leaders. But now my kingdom is from another place."
Okay, right there. How much plainer could Jesus make it? That my kingdom is not of this world. I reign from heaven, because if it was an earthly kingdom, then I would raise up my subjects to then kill those who are trying to arrest me and get me killed.
When Jesus said on the parable, or the Sermon of the Mount, sorry, he says, "My kingdom will be done on earth as it is in heaven." Does he not also mean earth as well, though?
Okay, where in Jesus' statements do you get that Jesus is not saying that his kingdom won't be on the earth? But who's going to implement God's kingdom on the earth? You, me, or when Jesus returns?
Jesus said, "My kingdom is not of this world."
So then that means you're not going to take Jesus and pit him against himself. Yes, God's kingdom will be on earth, and God will rule on earth the way he rules in heaven. But that's not a present reality. We do all we can to make it a present reality in our own lives, but the fulfillment of that is when Jesus returns, which is what the Bible teaches and which what you believe as a Muslim. Isa's coming back to be a just ruler, right?
Yes, yes.
That's when thy kingdom come, thy will be done. Right now, as a Christian, I do all I can to make God's will, and God's rule, my rule, to the best of my ability, but I can't impose God's rule on others. That I don't have the right to do. When Jesus comes, then God's kingdom will be fully implemented on earth as it is fully implemented in heaven.
But like you'd still say the world matters, and like you would want
Of
your
course
own
it does.
government to, like
Absolutely.
Gnostics, right?
Absolutely. Why do you think we go about trying to preach the gospel? Because when you get converted, when you have a convicted heart and you turn to Jesus, you will now think God's thoughts after him and do things that please God and no longer do the things that displease him. In other words, if you love the Lord, you won't have sex before marriage. You won't condone abortion. You won't condone slavery or oppression, etc., etc. So as an individual, you're going to now stop doing the things that God hates and implement the things that God does. And you're going to work within the system to try to make sure that legislators will legislate in a way that puts God's interest ahead of their own. But you can't impose that.
I see. Okay. Can I ask one more question?
Go ahead, man. No, you're not in a rush.
I was going to ask something else, but I'll ask this one.
If you remember, don't worry, I'm here.
When Christ says, I think it's on John, in the end of Apostle John's
Revelation?
epistle.
Oh, the epistle
No,
or John? Because there's the gospel,
yeah.
then the epistles.
Oh, the gospel, sorry.
Okay,
yeah.
what about the gospel?
And,
Go ahead.
he says that I go to my God.
Oh,
and
yeah,
your
John
God to
20:17.
mine.
John 20, verse 17.
Yeah.
Turn there. Yeah.
How would you interpret
Oh,
this?
that's easy. That's too easy. But first go to John 20, verse 17. That's too easy. You're asking me, you're actually making it very easy for me, which I appreciate. But go ahead. Go to John 20, verse 17. I'm going to walk you through this. That's what
Because I watch Speakers Corners, and I always see Christians fail to because
fail on
I've
this one?
studied Christian history a little bit, but they either become like Nestorian or they don't really understand the passage. And Hashem's quite convincing because
Hashim
I
is a
just-
joke. Can you beg Hashim to debate me? Because he's a clown. I have no respect for him. I think they're jokes.
Oh,
I'll be honest with you.
I don't live in London, so
it's
I just
okay.
watch them.
Yeah, but if you can email and say, Sam Shamoon thinks you're a joke, you're a clown, it'll decimate you. Can you have Sam come on your channel? I'll do it. No, honestly, these people that you think are sharp, they're idiots to me, and I'm going to show you in a minute. I'm not just speaking out of arrogance. I'm speaking out of confidence. John 20, verse 17, read it for me.
Okay, it says, Jesus says, do not hold on to me, for I have not ascended to the Father. Go instead to my brothers and tell them I am ascending to my Father and your Father, to my God and your God.
Number one, because you mentioned Hashim, this passage ends up proving too much. It proves Muhammad is a son of the devil and Allah is a false god. Did you know that?
I'm guessing because I've seen some replies, I'm guessing because he says Father, right?
Yeah, so can Muslims say with Jesus, Allah is your father, Jesus, and our father?
No.
So now, number one, for Hashim to use this, he's dishonest, because if he wants me to believe this, then that means I have to reject Muhammad. So does Hashim want me to believe this? Because if I believe it, I have to say Muhammad is the son of the devil.
I understand what
Okay,
you're
so we
saying.
can put that
That's
aside.
That's why I said your interpretation. I don't want to impose.
Yeah. Okay, so let's put that aside.
That would be dishonest, right?
Okay, let's put that aside. Did you notice it says my brothers, right?
Mhm.
My brothers. So that means Jesus is human and they share common ancestry. So he's human, they're human, he's an Israelite, they're an Israelite, and they believe in God the Father, he believes in God the Father. So my God and your God, my Father and your Father. Number one, notice he doesn't come out and simply say, I'm ascending to our Father and our God. He could have made it simple and say that, right?
Yes.
But notice he makes it clear, he is my Father, your Father, my God, and your God. I'm explaining to you why he does that in a minute. But since you quoted John 20, verse 17, then let's go to John 20, 27, 29. Same chapter, because I'm going to explain this, but I'm going to explain it systematically, and I'm going to explain in the context of the Bible and not my own opinion. But first of all, John 20, 27 to 29.
Yeah. Okay.
Read that for me.
Then he said to Thomas, put your finger here and see my hands. Reach out your hand and put it into my eye. He's going to say, my God and my...
And he
Thomas
said
is
unto
gonna say,
him,
my-
Ipen alto, you can't get around this. He said to him, not to the Father. Ha kuriasmu, o kyriosmu, ke o theosmu, the Lord of me and the God of me. And then Jesus rebuke him or bless those who would make the same confession without having to see physical proof.
Mhm.
So Jesus blessed
Yeah.
that confession, right?
Yeah, he did, yeah.
Okay, now, according to the Old Testament, an Israelite only has one Lord and God and not another. Go to Psalm 35, 23. I'm going to answer your question, but you have to wait. If you want a real answer, you're going to have to wait as I unpack it slowly but surely. Okay, now,
Psalm, what's
Psalm
that?
35, 23.
Psalm 35, 23.
Hmm?
Awake and rise to my defense. Contend for me, my Lord, my God and Lord.
But my God and my Lord, right?
Yeah.
Okay, my God and my Lord. So notice, my God and my Lord is simply another way of saying my Lord and my God, right?
Mhm.
Now, when this was translated into Greek, I'm going to now tell you how the Greek, now tell me if it sounds familiar. I'm going to pronounce it the Erasmian way. O theosmu kai o kuriasmu, the God of me and the Lord of me, right? That's how they translate
Yes.
in Greek. Now, John 20, 28, Thomas said, O kuriasmu kai o theosmu. Same thing. The God of me, the Lord of me, the Lord of me and the God of me. Now, Thomas, an Israelite, could not call a creature the God of me, the Lord of me, the Lord of me, the God of me, because that's something that an Israelite can only say of the true God. Yet Thomas said it of Jesus and Jesus accepted it. So you can't just take one verse out of the chapter and ignore the rest. So it is true, the Father is the God of the disciples, but so is Jesus. Father and Son together are the God of the disciples. Since the disciples can't have two gods, that means in some sense, Jesus and the Father must be one for both of them to be the God of the disciples. You with me there?
Yeah.
Okay, now. So then why did Jesus say, my God? Well, all right, let's go to John 1:14. Let me show you. John 1:14. Read that for me.
And the word became flesh and dwelt among us.
So you don't deny that as far as the Gospel of John is concerned, Jesus became flesh, right?
Yes, the hypostatic union,
So
right?
Jesus became flesh, but the Father didn't become flesh, right?
Yes,
And the Spirit didn't become flesh, right?
indeed, yeah.
And Jesus became flesh to be the servant of the Father. I just want to make that clear, right? So he came to become flesh to do the Father's will, to be his servant on earth.
Yes, he submitted his human will to his divine
Okay,
will, right?
now go to Jeremiah 32:27. Jeremiah 32:27.
Jeremiah, what, sir?
32:27.
I am the Lord, the God of all mankind. Is anything too hard for me?
Now you're reading the translation says mankind, and the Hebrew it's basar. Literally, I'm the Lord, the God of all flesh.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, now, if the Father is Jehovah, then he's the God of all flesh, right?
Yes.
And so would Jesus be the God of all flesh if he's Jehovah, and so the Holy Spirit. But now, if one of the persons, let's just assume the Trinity is true. Not saying it is. Of course, I believe it is, but let's assume it's true. If one of the persons becomes flesh and not the other two, and the one who became flesh did so to be the servant of the Father, why would it shock you then that the Father becomes his God after he becomes flesh?
I don't know, because I just see it as
Then ask what you see. I'm asking you according to the logic of the Bible, because your understanding, I really don't care for it, and you shouldn't care for my understanding. I'm talking about biblically, not how you see it, because you're not God, you don't know everything, and your sight is tainted and corrupted by your sin and your Islamic tradition.
from the scripture, like I just see God as like if you look in the Gospels, God is keep going being the Father. Like Christ is only called God once or twice.
What has that got to do with the fact that besides being called God, he says things and does things that only God can do, even according to your Quran? But that didn't answer my question. Notice what you did. I gave you the answer, you tap dance. Well, Jesus is rarely called God, but the Father's called God more often. Just like Jesus is often called Lord and the Father's rarely called Lord. Does that mean he's not Lord because he's not called Lord as much as Jesus is? And then you ignored the fact, how many Lord gods can an Israelite have?
One.
But Thomas said to Jesus, my Lord and my God. So let's ignore it because it's not said that often of Jesus. How many times must the Bible say something for it to be true? More than once?
Yeah, that wouldn't make sense, right?
You got it. So now, before you bring up another objection, which I'll be more than happy to answer, if we follow biblical logic, not your logic or mine, Jehovah's the God of all flesh. The Father is said to be Jehovah. The Son is said to be Jehovah. The Holy Spirit is said to be Jehovah. Yet the Son becomes flesh. The Father doesn't become flesh. The Spirit doesn't become flesh. The Son becomes flesh to be the servant of the Father. Because he became flesh to serve the Father becomes his God. What's the problem? Biblically, where is the problem?
Yeah, I think that's why maybe they would say that they would just resort to saying the scripture's corrupted, right?
Well, they can say what they want. I use the same Gospel of John, who introduces Jesus as the eternal Word, who's with the Father, who's God in essence, the creator and life giver who became flesh. So John is consistent with his own theology. If you don't like John being consistent, then stop reading John, because John is not acontextual and it's not unintelligible like the Quran that's all over the place.